Do you know how many screenplays are submitted each year to Nicholl Fellowship?
I know the year that I won, it was over 8,000. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And I think that now they only allow you to submit one. Before you could submit multiple scripts, you could submit a few, and now you have to pick one. So I think that will be, for the foreseeable future, the biggest, the most submissions that they ever had. It would creep up a little every year, but that was in 8,000 something, 8,300, something like that.
And what happened the first time you submitted?
First time I submitted, I just was rejected, and then maybe somewhere down the line, I made quarterfinalist and semifinalist with a script, that kind of thing, yeah.
How many times have you submitted a screenplay to the Nicholl Fellowship?
I'm sure 10 times, or more, and I'd submitted a few. And yeah, it was something a friend of mine told me really early at USC that I should try and go for. So I started then when I had one script, and I'd submit different ones over the years and made semifinalists a few times with different scripts. And the script that won, which was the feature version of the Shelter short film, it made top 50 one year. And so I felt like it was really close, and I actually did all this rewriting and all this other stuff on it in between, and then submitted again, randomly one year. I didn't submit every year, but submitted one year, and it didn't get really anywhere. And then during COVID, I just rewrote everything. I had time, and so I went back and I looked at that script, and sometimes scripts get kind of, they get mangled in the process of trying to get made. I'd been trying to get that film produced and working with a producer, and wasn't any fault of hers, but just based on resources, based on people we needed to appease, or ways that it had to go. The script just sort of lost. It got into this in-between state where it wasn't something that I felt confident in anymore. And so during COVID, I went back and rewrote. Looked at the old draft before I'd made all these changes and adjustments, and when I read the old draft and the old ending, I thought, okay, I was so wrong to ever change it, and that had been a realization of like, okay, I had something good, and I went away from that trying to make it better, and so I kind of put it back together and did some rewriting and submitted it, and felt like, if it can just kind of get the same kind of reader as got the first time that it made the top 50, then maybe it could go the rest of the way.
Well, that was one of the questions that we actually kind of glossed over, and I'm wondering if it applies to this, creating a commercial story versus a meaningful story. I don't know if that applies to this, but you said yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was an aspect of that. It was the appeasement of kind of people in the system, kind of in the shelter system, and we needed to work with them. And I talked to so many great people working in the system, but part of the film is about a few that aren't, and so that was always challenging to find that balance, to kind of say, well, these characters over here we can see how morally upstanding they are, and it's just these others over here that are a bit more cynical, right? But yeah, in terms of commercial potential too, that was something with that script that did change in the end. It was, honestly, actually, I think it was kind of the opposite. I think because it was an indie movie, we actually pushed it a little bit more into a bittersweet. It's always a pretty bittersweet movie, but we pushed it even more that way. But it just wasn't as earned, It didn't feel as earned as the ending we had, which actually was a little bit more uplifting. And I guess that's really the question in terms of going for commercial versus, I forget how you put it, but artistic integrity or just whatever you want to call it, is I think it just always has to feel earned. It has to feel like it's not just tacked on at the end to try and get you that last mile to the happy ending when maybe there shouldn't be one.
What was your reaction to the result of the semifinalist and then beyond?
Honestly, once it was semifinalist, I was feeling, really good, and I thought, okay, but then at that point, you don't expect to go further, really. you kind of think this is probably as far as I'm going to go, because it drops from, I think, 150 to 10, so it's a pretty steep cutoff, and you've already kind of gone so far, and everyone you're competing against has a really great script at that point. So in a way, it's great to make semifinals, but you also think, okay, there's probably not another positive email coming. Like, this is probably the end of the realistic hope or goal with it. It's to kind of get that mile marker that you made it that far.
Are there certain genres that do better than others with the Nicholl?
Definitely. I mean, the Nicholl, when you think of it, it's from the Academy, right? And so those are the kinds of movies, like the kinds of movies that would win the best picture Oscar are like the types, like they definitely like things, things that are prestige, like prestige dramas, or deal with a real person, a biography, or feels inspired by real life. There are all different kinds of genres, but they tend to highlight those the most. And I think other festivals or competitions don't. I mean, the Shelter script never did well anywhere else, whereas other scripts of mine would do better outside of the Nicholl. So I think it's everyone's taste.
How much scrutiny would you put your screenplays through before you submitted them to the Nicholl?
I mean, generally I put them through really intense scrutiny. And so it would kind of depend probably on how much work I had to do leading up to it. But, with all of these scripts, I would have, I would write them, I would go back, really think about the structure, really try and figure out a way to make the structure feel good after I've kind of had the experience of writing from instinct, or whatever you want to call it, kind of following the character journey. But, I'd have a lot of, trusted friends read, give notes, and just see, like, how are we hitting everywhere we need to be hitting is what I'm hoping coming through, yeah.
Did you ever hire a script consultant, or these were always people maybe at USC that you went to school with or something? Yeah,
it was always just people I knew and had come to trust over the years. My friend Steve, who wrote Losing Gracie, we trade scripts back and forth a lot. He's a great writer. I was in a writing group over COVID, which was great, on Zoom, which it's called Sandbox, and that was a great thing. Every other week, I think it's 25 pages, something you're submitting maximum. So then you can kind of get a sense from people what's working, what's not. And that would be generally how I would approach it, is what I'm trying to get through coming through? Like, am I succeeding at the goal? And people maybe won't always like something you're trying to do, or think it should be a different way, and that's also a good thing to listen or take a note on. But for me, it's generally, are you having the reaction I want you to have? Or is something getting lost in translation?
Can you take us through the days of finding out that Shelter Animal was named semi-finalist and then later finalist with Nicholl Fellowship?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the finalist was the big one, And so after I found out I was a semi-finalist, I was hoping, waiting, is there going to be something else? At that point, that there's probably some sort of process, or they were going to want to talk to you or something like that. And so I got an email maybe a couple weeks after the semifinals announcement, that said, we have some questions, or we have some things we want to just find out a little more about you, that kind of thing. And I didn't know how many people were getting this, but I knew that I had gotten nothing like this before, even making top 50. So I figured, okay, so I'm somewhere between 50 and 10, right, for the award. And so, you're writing like a little bio and maybe goals and some things like that, a resume. It was relatively simple stuff. And then I had to get on a Zoom, with a committee. And I was thinking, okay, so at this point, they'll probably ask me more questions, and they'll probably figure out, is this someone we would want to make a finalist or not? That kind of thing. And then when I got on, they basically said, you're a finalist. So that was awesome. And I was really surprised. And I knew that being a finalist, 10, there's 5 winners, and then there's 5 other finalists. So at that point, it really felt like, okay, this is something at least I can hopefully use to try and, I didn't have representation at the time. You know, I'd been dropped by my agent years before, and I'd left my manager just because we just had different opinions about things, just different directions. And so I had struggled to find another manager, which I didn't expect. And I was thinking, at least if I'm finalist, someone will hopefully be interested. Yeah.
And that was my next question, was there sort of this talk of, okay, now that you've won, you need to do A, B, and C, and this will really take you even further? And was that true? Did those things work?
Yeah, I mean, after winning, we got a lot of that. I mean, we had like a week of, because it was COVID, it had to all be via Zoom, but, you know, talking with past winners, kind of coaching on the best way to try and put yourself forward, you know, just a lot of advice. And in the finalist stage, there was like an announcement, and then there were still agents and managers starting to, at that point, come in. And, you know, all of these things are always really about what you do with them. I mean, that's really kind of the thing that I think a lot of people don't know is it's a great platform, but you still sort of need to take those steps. But I was really lucky in the fact that I had a manager reach out to me, and I spoke with him, and I was getting a couple others, and I was waiting to see which way I was going to go. But Joel, who's my manager now, you know, he had his own agency. He has a few really big, great clients. And after being in a bigger agency and kind of like being with like a big agent and seeing the sort of like the result of that, and that didn't work, and then also being with kind of a newer agent or a newer manager at a bigger company, Joel felt like, okay, I haven't gone this way, and I think this is the way I want to go, because I really want someone who's like a partner for me, and that was what Joel is, you know, like. And so I'm fortunate, I think, that I'd had the experience of trying different things as a writer, director especially, and feeling like they didn't work, and then getting the opportunity to have someone who fit the mold of what I thought would work best for me come forward and be interested in representing me. Sure,
and that kind of maybe dispels the notion of just because you get like a big agent doesn't necessarily mean that they'll have time for you.
Yeah.
And that can be disappointing.
Exactly. And I think hard to, depends on the kind of filmmaker you want to be, or the kind of writer you are especially. If you're someone who wants to pitch for the biggest projects, you probably need a big agent who's going to get you in the door. Whereas if you're very much interested in trying to make your own projects, then maybe you need something different, and you need someone who understands that. And that's how Joel works is, okay, this is the project we're working on. Like, we're working on these two projects together, and we're going to try and figure out how to get these two projects made, and that's just more my speed. Like, I want to make things, I don't want to pitch, because really that's your career. I think a lot of times in the business is just pitching, and then something hits or it doesn't, and you live off that for a while. And as much as I can, I want to try and make things, all the way through.
Is it important to have meaning in your work? It's not just,
yeah.
We all need a paycheck. There's
Sure.
nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
But
yeah, I think, for me, the meaning and the interest and excitement in the work is so important, because if it's a film, you're probably going to work on it for 2 years. Even if it's not full time, if you're writing and directing it, especially, you have to be able to see it all the way through post, and it's going to hit a point where the movie is done, but it's not done, and it has to be taken the rest of the way, but you've maybe explored most of the creative, aspects of it, even beyond it being actually completely finished. Then there's marketing, and then there's all of that goes with it. And if you don't have meaning in it, then I feel like you're going to burn through that feeling of, okay, well, it's a paycheck, and I did this and I moved on, because you don't really move on for a very long time. And so that excitement of well, at least I'm putting this thing out there that I believe in is really important.
What are some do's and don'ts screenwriters should be aware of before they submit?
I mean, I think definitely for writers, I would say it's true of any writers, but especially, you know, when you have something like a deadline for the Nicholl or something like that. I guess just to me, like big writing do's is write something that you care about, write something that makes you excited, it gets you interested, and makes you want to find the best version of it, and keep rewriting it and keep researching if research matters, whatever it is, just keep exploring. And to me, the don't is, like a big don't is, I guess you want to do think about structure and do think about how it moves, and how it progresses. But I think don't try and reverse engineer everything about your script from a place of, I have to hit these mile markers, as we go, because I think that really limits a writer in terms of where they could land, like what they could achieve or what they could create if they kind of let the concept or the characters or whatever propel them forward and make them want to see what's going to happen and what could happen, and find kind of the extent and limits and boundaries of a story. And I think also when people kind of do that reverse engineer thing of, okay, I have to hit this low point at this moment and this midpoint at this moment, a lot of times there's a lot of spinning wheels, I feel like, of trying to get there, of like setting something up and, okay, it needs to last for 10, 15 pages, and then this new thing is going to occur, this new story point is going to occur. And I kind of think we see a lot of that today, where movies feel reverse engineered and kind of overstructured, and that they're perfectly done but sort of dead because there are not any surprises or anything happening in them. And I kind of think so I guess it kind of comes down to the same thing, which is, I think the best thing you can do is to give yourself permission to explore and not try and have this kind of cut and dry outline immediately going into a project before you're writing. Give yourself that space to play around and have fun in the world.
Well, you said that structure, though, is important to you. So you say you like to sort of do the screenplay first, maybe loosely, and then you kind of go in and fine-tune the structure? Yeah,
I mean, I guess coming from editing too, I think about it like editing, having like a rough draft, a rough edit of a movie is often going to have a lot of scenes that are too long, too short, out of whack, in the wrong order. And then you're looking at that and you're thinking, okay, we have to get it right. We have to make it feel right and flow right. And I think writing's very much the same process for me. It's, writing scenes, exploring characters, things like that is like the footage, the footage and the raw cut scenes. And then it's looking at it from the perspective of, okay, now how do we take all of these disparate elements of that maybe are in conflict with each other, maybe they wouldn't match continuity. A character does one thing in one scene and a different thing in another scene that wouldn't add up, but you're just sort of exploring, and then find the through line and the path and the structure there. To me, it's kind of like documentary editing almost, in that sense. Like, create the reality of the characters. You have to make it. It's not there, so you have to write it, but then you have to also make it flow and fit within a single narrative.
How much feedback about your screenplay did you get during the Nicholl process?
Honestly, not really any feedback, because at that point it was like, they're like, this, we like this, this is the thing that we really like. And I don't really remember any agents or managers really having, potential ones having any feedback or notes or anything like that. I think a lot of times they're looking for, is this the kind of project where I know where to slot it in? Like, do I see the path forward for it? And it's either they do or they don't at that point. And maybe later some of that would have come, but it was pretty much like we like what this is, and that's why it won,
How much will you rewrite one of your scripts based on notes you've gotten feedback?
It's hard to say how much I rewrite based on notes, but I would just say I probably rewrite each one, I'm sure, a dozen times in some way or another. And just, for me, structure is very important, finding the structure, especially because I tend to write without it early on. But that's a big thing, and I edit too, and so coming at it from an editor, a lot of times I'm just shuffling scenes until I'm finding like what feels right, how do things click into place. So I'll definitely go on and on and on rewriting something.
I'm sure that helps a lot, being an editor.
It gives, in writing and directing too, it gives a lot of freedom in the sense that sometimes I'll be on set and I'll kind of think, this could be the opening of the movie. You know, this could be the opening shot of the movie, actually, even though it's scene 3 or 4 in the script. There can be a little bit of fluidity there, which can be scary, but also, liberating.
Sure, and also knowing that, stuff, without using the cliche, we can fix it in post, but maybe we can experiment in post.
Yeah.
No,
Definitely, and Hard Miles especially was a movie where we were trying to do so much. We were trying to, just really aim for making this big movie on very limited resources. And so it was always a sense of, let's just try and grab all that we can, knowing maybe some things are in conflict. We maybe can't have this version and this version together, but if we can just try and get the best stuff, then we'll find a path, through it. And yeah, it's hard on set when you're working that way, because you're not sure that you're putting all the bricks, you're laying all your bricks in the right order, the right place, but you just have to have trust that you're going to then rethink it later.